Hello and welcome back to Fosseway Classic Car Workshop. The next task on this project is getting the engine out, which means I've got to strip everything either side of it, so the carburettors and the intake, the exhaust, the cooling pack here, which of course means draining the fluids first. That's where I'll start. There's a drain tap here underneath the radiator, but this one's actually not working anymore. Not quite sure what's happened here, but basically that tap's not going to do anything, so I'll just take the whole lot and drain it out of there. Well, it's encouraging to see how clear this coolant is, and I've done a test on it, and it shows to be about the right kind of mixture as well, so really good, because that's obviously acts as anti-corrosion protection as well as anti-freeze. So while that finishes draining, I'll start to undo all of these hoses so that I can take the cooling pack off. There's been some extra silicone put in there to seal up this top hose. So at this stage I don't really care about splitting this bottom hose because of course it's going to be replaced, so I just want to be able to make sure that the radiator comes free. We can see here that this car's been uprated with the Kenlo cooling fan. There's an electric assist if needed. There's a switch in the car, but also on the top hose here we've got a temperature sensor that comes down here and into that controller there. Okay, now to get these brackets off here. See, these need stripping, they've been badly painted. Tube that goes down the frame there, need to watch out for as well. Final piece to detach before I can lift out the radiator is this deflector plate here. So it's attached with these 3 Jubilee clips, it looks like, and then there's just a couple of bolts that go into the bottom of the radiator here. Quite a simple but effective way of just getting as much air into the radiator as possible, as well as stopping debris from the road coming through and damaging the radiator itself. With the radiator out of the way, I can now take off the Kenlo fan and the header tank bracket. So with the radiator and fan out of the way, I'm now going to concentrate on this side of the engine. So I'll start off with the crank breather hose that connects between here and here, then get to work with the air cleaner, plenum, inlet carburettors and inlet manifold. You need to pop the distributor cap off at this point. Right, now to get the air filter housing, the plenum here out. So the plenum here attaches with two big wing nuts, and then there are three big clips that go around the top of the filter housing. We can see more clearly with the air filter out that the air comes in via these tubes here, through the filter, up through the top, out through the plenum and into the carburetors this way. So I've got this little screw at the bottom of the filter housing, and then these two on the side, the filter housing will come out. As ever, I'm going to screw these straight back in again so that they don't get separated and lost. My next task is to get these big triple carburetors off. First of all, I need to disconnect the fuel supply. So that comes from the tank at the back of the car here, and then goes out through this pipe up to the three different carburetors which have got each of their own float chambers. So as you can see, there's fuel in here still, so I need to get that out and make sure there isn't any fuel in those float chambers, and undo that. But also I've got the accelerator control linkage, so that's coming across the bulkhead here, down and linking in with each of the throttle butterflies. So I need to disconnect that as well before I can then detach it from the inlet manifold and take it off as a unit. The fuel filter housing here has got a wire mesh gauze in the top that stops the worst of the debris coming through from the tank here. There is also nowadays a modern paper filter that you can put in there, which is a sensible additional precaution. So the way to undo this, if it'll undo at all, unscrew this at the bottom, and then these wires will loosen. I should be able to get the glass bowl out of the bottom here, but you can see the fuel's just starting to come out, so if I can carefully swing this out. So that's out of the way. I've got myself a petrol-proof cup to pour that in. Now I can disconnect this banjo connector here and start taking out the pipe that goes to the carburetors. 9/16 spanner onto here. It loosens fairly easily. So with that taken off, we can now see the seal that goes at the top and then this really fine wire gauze filter. Now I can disconnect the banjo bolts for each of the three carburetors. Get to get access to the float chambers for each of them and then check what fuel's still in there. At this stage you can see some of the lovely quirky old-fashioned filtering as well. So there's these really cool little sprung gauze filters that go inside each of the carburetors as well to catch the worst of the debris. So obviously you've got the primary fuel filter and this is a secondary one for each carb as well. So now I'm just going to undo the top of each of these float chambers. And the lovely things about these is they've each got a little tag on that says whether it's the front, centre or rear carburetor float chamber. So nice little touch Obviously got to get them off and put them back in the right order as well. So each of these pipes on top is an overflow in case the float gets stuck, and that just basically pours out into the engine bay, which is something you don't want to happen. Take off the front of the engine here, so the water pump, the alternator. You can see the water pump is driven by this belt that comes off the crankshaft pulley, which also drives the alternator here. So with the tension off the belt, should hopefully be able to get the fan belt off and out of the way. Some manual tensioner here. Right, now to take the pulley off so I can get to all the fixings to remove the water pump. With the two bolts out here for the alternator, obviously I need this out first before I can take the water pump off. There's a third one just under here, which is 5/8, which I need to get out with a spanner because the socket won't get in, there's not enough clearance. Now to disconnect all these connectors onto the alternator itself. So those two just plug in. Just undoing this connection here. Let this drain off a little bit more before. Okay, so there we go. So you can see here I've laid out the bolts in the right order so that they correspond to where they go back on the water pump. I don't know what anyone else's system for this is, but I find that putting the bolts back into something like this and putting cable ties around so that they in effect don't fall out, or they shouldn't fall out, is my way of keeping things in the right order. In this case, I'm just using the end of a hammer. Okay, you can see a little bit of movement there. There we go. You can see the thermostat there. HT leads off the spark plugs. The coil can come off easily at this stage too. With the alternator and water pump, we can see clearly down to the engine mount here. So we've got nice easy access for that. There's a bit more I need to do around this side of the engine with the distributor here. And there's an earth strap you can see just down here that I need to get away, because of course the engine mount for this side is just behind those. So with this 7/16 set screw loosens from the distributor, pull that out. There we go. The distributor out now, I've got much better access to the engine mount here. Just need to take off this earth strap. There's a tiny little clip that joins this rod that goes down to that lever there on the accelerator linkage. So if I push this off, I should be able to detach this part of the linkage. There we go. With that disconnected, I can now withdraw this along with the carburettors. I need to disconnect this throttle return spring because it's attached to a bracket on the inlet manifold. The other two will come with the carburettors. You can see them, one of them is just down here, and the other one's on the end here. At this end, I've got this vacuum tube that goes to the distributor to disconnect as well. Now I can start to disconnect these nuts here that hold the carburettors onto the manifold. So the carburettors are attached with 4 half-inch nuts, 3 of which are about accessible in this case, and the 4th is fairly inaccessible. Fortunately, they're relatively easy to undo if you can get to them. It's not like they're corroded on, they tend to be fairly easy to remove, like you can see here. So these are just undoing really easily. I'm going to have to kind of go through and under the ones that are blind. After an awful lot of fiddling, getting my spanners through under there, I'm nearly at the point where I can take the last nut off there and hopefully lift these carburettors away. I realised that I don't have enough clearance between the float chamber here and this casting on the brake pedal box. So when I pull this out, I don't have enough clearance on that stud there to actually lift the whole lot away. So looking at what's happened, you actually look at the engine down the centre line of the car. The engine isn't quite centred on that wiper and the catch there, and so the engine is leaning to that side. It also looks like it's actually slightly rotated that way, so it's slightly more centralised at the front here than it is at the back. So over time, obviously the engine mount on this side is in effect squashed down, possibly due to kind of old age and wear and the torque of the engine. What I'm having to do is get a jack underneath the sump, lift the engine up a little bit to get me clearance to lift this set of carburettors out, so hopefully this will work. I don't want to lift it too much because I haven't undone the engine mounts. Just want to do enough to get it up a bit. Also, I don't want to lift the car off the axle stands either. Okay, so hopefully this will now work. Just an extra little bit of clearance needed. There we go. And finally. Okay, so there's actually one connection here underneath. Of course, for the choke cable, which is quite difficult to access, as I can now undo, there's just a split pin here. So I just want to do the choke cable, which is coming here. It's the end of the cable is actually locked into this. So if I just undo this bit. Right, that's the cable loose, and then there's a clamp here that holds the cable into position there, so I need to undo that as well. So with that, the choke cable comes away, and I can finally lift the carburettors off the car. So now it's a question of getting all the springs and the clips, getting this fuel line out finally as well. Making sure I haven't lost anything. These nuts underneath, though, are impossible to get to with a socket, so they have to be done by hand. This one here I've already started. I'm doing blinds, but it's relatively easy to do. It should just leave me the one under here. Hopefully that will come without causing any problems. Oh, and finally, that shows the flexible coupling where the exhaust broke a while back. As you can see, I'm a good way through stripping down the engine now, and it's not too far from being able to lift it out. I've got the starter motor in here to remove, and there's the oil canister in here to take off because that sticks right through the frame, and obviously the engine can't come out with it. So I'm going to let the oil drain now. Please join me next time, and I'll be disconnecting the few remaining things, lifting out the engine and gearbox. Thanks for watching.